Hey guys, surprise, we're gonna do a live stream. um, Last week was kind of hectic for both of us, so we didn't get to do it, unfortunately. So this week we're making up for it by doing one now. Um, like I said before, when you guys post questions, just make sure you put your name behind the question, so I know who I'm referencing. For right now, I posted something about a day or so ago, asking some of the lower level guys, what things that they would like to see on the podcast, and I'm basically now going to use that to answer some of the questions here now, and you guys can listen to it later. Kev, where were you at today? Were you working local?
Yeah, it was kind of just bouncing all over the place and cleaning up little messes here and there.
Yeah. All right. Um, so Nick Hinham asked how to use a multimeter in troubleshooting by process of elimination. Do you have anything that I have something that I usually talk about, but I want to hear what you like. What's some of your secrets like when checking for safeties, open safeties, like the going through like when I typically I start with making sure that the switch is closed by just going right on the switch to make sure I have my 120 or 208 there, and then because basically if you hop on a comm and then and go down the line, you should be able to sense whenever the voltage goes to zero when you're measuring the same line, right? So a lot of times what I'll do is because in order to hook up to that comm, you'd have to go all the way over by the electrical cabin to hook up 20 foot worth of cable. So I just hook up on the common of the oil fill switch, and then basically just hopscotch around until I lose it. Do you basically do the same, or what do you do?
Yeah, I basically do the same. I either hop on there or I hop on the compressor module or something inside the that's close. You just make sure on the wiring diagram that's the same. I mean, but I also have a meter lead extension, so I can go 12 feet. And then a lot of times, what I'll do is I get the magnet on my meter, so I can go 12 feet each way. It's 6 foot each way. Well, if I put the extension on there, I mean, it could be 18. I mean, and then now with everything being like Fluke Connect, everything's on my phone, so I can look at it on my phone as I'm doing something.
Do you get a fancy meter?
Well,
Fluke?
I don't have the 1970s editions, so
Neither do I. I think it's maybe 12 years old or something. Do you have you ever heard about like some people say that you should be getting your meter calibrated? Do you at all, or is this usually break by then?
I usually lose it before then. So I've probably left a couple $1,000 worth of multimeters inside rack panels
Yeah.
all around Chicago. So usually nobody's kind enough to tell me that, hey, your meter's in here. Usually just disappears and walks away.
Yeah, I seen a bunch of people start using those Apple something or other. It's basically a small little GPS that you can put in whatever. Like I've seen guys put them in pack outs. So if something were to get stolen, basically they can trace it out that way in case something were to happen. Hello, Brett. Do you remember me? No, I don't, because I can't see names, unfortunately. Some of the other questions. What we get? Transitioning from single systems to true parallel racks. I'm assuming you're working on like single systems and you're trying to figure out how to step into doing rack refrigeration. I mean, I give this advice a bunch of times, but my suggestion is make sure that basically you're just reading up on every single part of that rack, because instead of having one compressor, one condenser fan motor, you now have basic systems, right? You have a condenser system, you have the oil system. Um, Making sure that everything is working in unison. You got any advice
I
when
mean,
when
you could
transition?
basically just show up. You could basically just show up to work and get a job doing this. So I mean, you might as well just hop right into it. I mean, that's the only advice. I mean, just start breaking it down to little bits. I mean, it's not like there isn't a shortage of people out here, wanting guys. So, I mean, just break it into bits and learn as you go. Go and try not to, dump the whole charge.
So I know you're third generation, aren't you?
Yeah.
Second. So, all right. So but you said your father didn't work on commercial rack refrigeration, right? Just
No,
yeah.
I was the first one in my family to do grocery store refrigeration. So, I
Okay.
mean, I learned on single.
So I mean, so how did you transition?
I was in a union, so I was working at Johnson Controls, and I absolutely hated my job because it was the most miserable job ever, just changing filters and being at the same place every day. So I lied my ass off on a fucking job application and got in at a refrigeration shop, and I read, for hours every night until I, understood whatever I looked at. Every night I went home that I didn't understand something, or like I started right in the beginning of smartphones. So I mean, right when 4G phones came out. So I mean, still kind of limited, but I mean, every night I would be going home reading. If I seen a valve I didn't understand it, I had a book in my truck of all the Sporland books, and I would sit there and I would read it and I'd try to understand it. And I played around and poked around. I mean, I basically taught myself how to work on racks from the internet and just making mistakes. I mean, I worked at a shop where it was a smaller shop, and none of the journeymen wanted to teach anybody anything because they were all afraid everybody's going to take their work. So they refused to teach anybody anything. So 9 times out of 10, the younger guys were teaching themselves how to do this. So, I mean, thank God we had a lot of convenience stores too. So, I mean, I learned on that too. I get to build up more on that. And then I just slowly worked my way into doing more and more rack work. And, then eventually, jumped into programming, and, I outgrew the place, and then I moved on.
I'm trying to remember. So you spent a lot of time on the HVAC forums, didn't you? When those things were big.
Yeah, I basically learned my entire career from reading through, guys talking and looking up valves. And I mean, Google's a powerful teacher. I mean, it's probably one of the best resources out there. I mean, it's like I always say, my phone's my best tool I have. I mean, there's no better tool than my phone. I don't care what guys say. Like, I never yell at apprentices for being on the phone for the most part. I mean, especially if they're looking something up. I mean, your phone is probably the best tool you have.
Mm, Green Day. What what green guys should do before calling their supervisor or lead tech? Make sure that you're
Google
seriously
it. Seriously,
Google the
Google
problem.
it. Yeah, honestly.
Well, don't. I mean, you're not going to fucking Google it and then, hey, I Google this and this is what I came up with. This is what I think the issue is.
Do you know how many times I've Googled something, especially when I was green? Google the symptoms of what it is, what you're looking at. You know how many times there's probably a topic on that old HVAC. I mean, that thing's pretty old now, but like, okay, even in the Facebook group, search bar,
Yeah.
just basically like Googling it. You'd be surprised how many times you punch in like keywords in there, like, rack oil issues, rack. I mean, you would be surprised how much stuff comes up. I mean, papers and all kinds of stuff and information. Google it, give it a try, look it up, look up the case spec model number. Look up your case specs before you call. Look up, whatever you're doing. Get all your saturation temperatures, get your superheats, get your, have all your information. Check the damn receiver level.
Yeah. Don't just call them up and be like, hey, this is the problem. Give it. What's your pressures? Oh, I don't know. I didn't do that yet. That's a real quick way to get hung up on really, really quick. Kevin was making fun of me saying that I had a mullet back in what 2011. You were looking at the forums the other night and you're like, what the you're muted. You're broken. Can't hear you. Kevin.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, sorry, my internet went down. Yeah, shocker. Yeah, I mean, I found there's stuff on there from 2005 from guys you see on there, but like there's all kinds of stuff in there. You know, Google's the number one resource out there. I mean, if I'm working on something and I don't know what it is, the first thing I'm doing is Googling it, figure out what it is. I mean, I'm not going to waste a bunch of time trying to figure out something then when I could just look it up on Google and read about it or see what the issues are. Why would I waste all that time?
Talking about wasting time, I remember getting home at 2:00 in the morning on dial-up, trying to figure out what the hell was wrong, and it taking forever to download anything, and then trying to print it, and hopefully the manual prints out by 6:00 in the morning because I got an old ass printer that prints slower than shit. Me, I go I look up all the specs and see how it was supposed to run. You know, the refrigeration IOM, the refrigeration schedule. You know, that's the Bible. That should tell you how that thing should be running. Yeah, a lot of it's experience as well, but I mean, going back and getting it running exactly the way it was intended to, is usually what I do. You know, it's key for me anyway. What else we got? Oh, someone was at Scotty, I'll get to your RDM stuff in a minute here. Um, don't be afraid to call tech support. No, I agree with that. If you can get a hold of them. Input output boards. Yeah, we're gonna do so here sometime soon I'm making a collection of every single Dixel controller that I have, and I'm basically gonna start doing some tutorials where it shows you how to communicate via Wismate. How to communicate, get that controller talking to the E2 or the E3, and yeah, I'm working on that stuff as well. Did you send that module? You got that module out, right?
No, I went to the post office to go send it, and then I realized I don't have any packing tape, and I was not going to pay $15 for some packing tape, so I'll send it tomorrow.
All right. So Rdm sensors. So they do a lot like how, if anyone on here is old like me, used to work on the CC100s. They had a temperature sensor that would basically measure the right on the distributor tube. Because right at the distributor tube, if you measure that temperature, that should be saturated of what your saturated suction is exactly. So they used to tell superheat by the distributor temperature and the and the suction temperature sensor. So with that, that's how they derive superheat. RDM's doing the same thing. Sometimes they have pressure transducers, sometimes they don't, because they can globally send the pressure if there's no EPR, because a lot of the stores that we deal with, there's no EPRs on any of those cases. They're all pulse width modulation expansion valves, and basically they share the pressure throughout, but 99% of the time they're getting the saturated off of the temperature sensor that's right on the distributor tubes. Be mindful if that thing thinks it's flooding back for whatever reason. One of the guys I work with just had one where it wasn't, I think you said it was sitting underneath the coil. So it was close enough to the coil where it would show 0 degrees of superheat. It wouldn't show, negative, but it was showing like 0 degrees, 0 to 1 degree of superheat, and then basically clamped down the valve and shut down. Why are you shit grinning smiling over there? What'd you read? Your internet's broken again.
No, I had it muted. I was just reading something that your apprentices keep posting.
What are they saying?
Let's go over what your other apprentice did about the pressure limiting power heads.
Oh, I didn't. I don't know. What did they do?
Don't ignore him.
No, no. Did he just post something now?
What's that?
Did he just post something now? I didn't even see it.
So we'll go over to pressure limiting power heads. Why they're used and why some people use them. So pressure limiting power heads. Their whole goal here is to limit the back pressure coming back to the compressor post defrost or under a high load. So this would be post defrost, huge load increase. You see these a lot on walk-in freezers. And some cases really aren't necessary, but they're mostly used on walk-in freezers for to keep flood back from happening post defrost and to keep the compressor from overamping. And otherwise, you would need like a CRO valve or a A8 valve on the suction line to keep the compressor from overamping. So this allows like a little bit slower pull down. So that way, once your pressure gets below that MOP on that power head, then it'll start opening up the valve. But other than that, it'll be like a quarter of the way open. I don't exactly know where it is, but I know it's reduced capacity. So that way you don't slug the compressor. You see these a lot on like Target, for example, should have pressure limiting power heads in the freezer evaporators to keep them from wiping out the compressors and overamping them. I mean, you see it a lot in single systems. On a rack, it's not really necessary. I mean, we have the capacity to take care of it, and we have ways to take care of the load increase coming back. But what you're going to see on them, the cons are you're going to have slower pull down times because now that suction pressure has to come down faster, or it's going to come down at a rate it has to hit before that TXV starts opening up and starts flooding that coil more. So, I mean, it's good on a single system for post-defrost applications to cut down flood back. If you have a lot of flood back post-defrost, or if you have a high load increase and you're getting close to that compressor envelope where you're going to start overamping the compressor and you get some nuisance trips or nuisance overloads. And it's a way to do load control without putting in a crankcase pressure regulator, which you really don't want. I mean, it's more of a pressure drop on the suction line. You want to try to keep that pressure drop on the suction line down to nothing. So that is basically what a pressure limiting power head's for.
The only problem with that is you have to make sure whatever the number is, like, so for 404, I think it's a RZP 40. You're limited at 40 psi. So if the unit is still overamping at 40 psi and you have to get it down further, then you have no other choice but to put in a crankcase pressure regulator. The hope is that whatever is labeled on that valve, like for I think 410A valves, I think not 410A, CP. I just remember there was a commercial expansion valve that I saw that it had like a CP 100, which means it's going to have partial flow until the pressure gets down below 100 psi. I think it was an R22 valve. So you'd have to look at the Sporling cut sheet and see what pressure it is, and to see if you would actually need a crankcase pressure regulator. Just by knowing what that pressure is, you can basically see what the amperage is at that given point in time.
Yeah, I mean it gives you a dual function. You get some load control during pull down. You can stop it from overamping the compressor. I mean, to be honest, overamping the compressor really isn't that big of an issue on pull down on most equipment, 3-phase equipment. On single-phase equipment, yes, it's going to be way more of an issue. On 3-phase equipment, it's not as big of an issue. So, I mean, it's less of an issue. It's just a little bit extra protection. Why not accumulator? I mean, why not a rack? I mean, it's just however it's designed. I mean, some of these already have accumulators on them and MOP power heads. I mean, it's just to help, extra protection.
You guys are fucking relentless. Skips right over me. I swear to God, this is Greg.
It is.
Is it Greg?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about biflow check valve, solenoid valves, and how if they're rebuilt with the wrong rebuild kit, they don't work too well. Greg spent 3 days, Greg? 4 days?
On that? Just calling them out right like that.
He started it. and I was there. Was it 18 minutes, Greg? I just want to make sure. Jerk. Greg, keep firing away. My experience on R290 is extremely limited. Kevin, how about yours? Kevin,
Yeah, I'm here.
290.
I didn't hear. My only experience working with R290s on those junk RNEG cases, or RNEG cases, the
AHT.
ones that all AHT cases that Aldi has,
Why don't you like them?
because those things are junk and they're like impossible to work on.
The only thing I don't, well, one of the things I don't like about it is that they have a
little 6-inch square you get to work in.
Yeah, that sucks. No, one of the things what was it? They have an analog output off of the controller to control the evaporator fans.
Yeah, I mean, it's way overcomplicated for what it is. It's a little throwaway coffin case. I mean, that's my extent with 290. I mean, I don't really service small stuff. I mean, they had the apprentices do a lot of that stuff. So I mean, I really don't get to see too much 290 stuff. I mean, yeah, other than those AHT cases, that's been about the extent of it. And to be honest, every time those things break, especially with like Aldi up here, they just come and get them, bring them to the warehouse, give them a new one. Yeah. So like with us, they'll get like 20 or 30 of them broke and sitting there, and then they'll send like 2 apprentices there for, like 3-4 days, and just let them go to town on them and just fix whatever they can fix, and then they ship them back out to the stores because you can't really fix them on site. So
why not?
I mean, because the labor, and it's more labor intensive, it takes more time. And if they're on an island, you got to rip the whole island apart to get to one case. So it's just cheaper and easier for them to grab the Big Joe, pick it up, drop a new case in the spot, plug it in, and get it out of there.
The Solo Chills, are those conventional refrigerant, or did they swap them over to 290 yet?
Everyone I've seen, I've only seen 2 Solo Chill stores, and they've both been 448 and 449. So they haven't been conventional. I think they may have. I would assume they would have 290, but I'm not a big fan of Soul Chill. I don't like the whole idea of the glycol loop and everything else. I mean, it just seems like a giant waste of energy, and it's just way too overly complicated. I mean, they're not set up for a technician to be able to work on them. I mean, it's I don't know. It's way too much going on for an average guy. I mean, there's way too much going on inside there in the computer wise. I just don't see the benefit of it. You're better off putting a rack in my opinion. Small protocol. I mean, the Soul Chill stores are all small. I mean, you throw a protocol in that same application, it does great.
Have you ever told the story about the experience you had with Solo Chill? The receivers?
Which one?
The receivers?
So we had like 8 or 9 cases come up, and every one of them the receiver was piped backwards. So we were getting like random head pressure issues, random liquid feeding issues, and on all of them the receivers ended up being piped backwards from the factory.
R2 R290 equals take it out and dump in 407C. No, I don't think you can do that. So the other thing with R290 stuff, like every control that's in there, the contacts have to be self-contained, because I've been reading that hydrocarbon book. Lots of good information, just I have to read in small doses because I'm starting to get narcolepsy reading it. But basically it's they label off how the evaporator fans have to be, it's not, I don't want to say explosion proof, but basically it has a lot more protection against anything that potentially is going to cause a spark. Any of the contacts, for any of the controls, Any of the evaporator fan motors. What else? Chasing the boards are always fun in the age. Yeah, I know. I agree with that. R290 Whole Foods in California. What? What? They have a whole store that's R290?
No, so it's a Carnot store. So it's actually R290. What they're doing is it's CO2 inside the store, and they're using R290 skids on the roof to chill the basically be the condensers for the CO2 racks. So they're basically running it'd be subcritical CO2 still, because I mean it's you're not it's not running transcritical because they're using the R290 skids. They actually went over the limit. I believe they got in a bunch of trouble for this, and they almost had to shut down all the stuff because I think there's like 40 or 50 pounds of R290 in these things. I don't think it was ever approved properly, obviously, because there's that limit you could have on there. But that was a Carnot refrigeration store. From what I heard, it ran pretty good. I mean, they were using 290 as the high side condenser, and they were using CO2 inside the store.
Oh wow!
But they're definitely over the limit. I mean, the 290's on the roof, but I mean, it's definitely over the limit.
Well, I was told that you can run a whole entire store of R290 basically with a can of propane that you stick on your grill, a 50-pound tank. But I forget what the limit is.
I don't know about an entire store. I mean, that seems a bit of a exaggeration. I mean, you figure
if you're doing
30 pounds of R290.
If you're doing secondary.
If you're doing secondary, yeah. I mean, R290 is pretty efficient, but I mean, even those ones I heard had like 60 pounds of gas in them. I mean, but you got to remember, it's like a mini air conditioner, and I'm pretty sure these were modular CO2 racks. I don't think they were very large CO2 packs. I think they were more modular. But that's about all I know about them. I just remember seeing all the posts about them, and I remember asking Carnot about them when when I did the last startup and I was talking to them.
If anyone out there has the refrigeration schedule and the submittals for that, I'd really like to see that. I'm kind of curious about that. They're putting entire supermarkets full of R290 cases now. AHT and Husman ID6SU. Yeah, and then what they're probably putting a condensing loop, with a heat exchanger, right, for the loop. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but again, all your eggs are in one basket. You lose the glycol loop, you lose the pumps, lose that, the whole store's down. So, I mean, glycol is a lot harder to find than refrigerant. I'll tell you that right now.
Really? You having a problem getting it or what?
I mean, glycol is as of right now, it's getting more and more scarce. I mean, we have a place up here that makes it, but I mean, again, it depends on the customer. I mean, some of them demand certain glycol brands, and there's only certain places you can get it. So, I mean, the last Costco I started up, they said we ordered the glycol, was it like 2 months in advance? 2 weeks before it was supposed to get there, they told us it would be another 3 to 4 weeks.
Shit.
So, I mean, you're at the mercy of these people. I mean, they had 2 months to make this stuff. I mean, and they couldn't do it because they're back ordered, and the chemicals to make the glycol is back ordered. I mean, glycol has its down drawbacks too. I mean, you got to remember, you're going to a second median. I mean, you're never going to get the efficiency out of that glycol loop that you would get out of an air cooled condenser. I mean, you're exchanging two different medians. So, I mean, you always had that efficiency loss. So, I mean, yeah, you make it up with the propane cases, but I mean, again, now you have service issues, and propane isn't exactly easy to get. Refrigerant grade propane, it's not just sitting on every shelf. I mean, now you got to have, a better scale that goes in grams. I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, is it going to pay off in the end serviceability? Absolutely not. It's going to cost double. Really? I mean, their whole thing on this is trying to make a modular unit they could just pull out and have some maintenance guy replace us for $10-15 an hour, and they could just pull the whole module out and stick a whole new one in there, and it'll cool. I mean, that's they're going like the coal pack style. I mean, that's their whole thinking here.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I mean that's what they're pushing for, like solo chill and everything else. I mean, you lift the whole thing off, the whole solo chill unit off, you could slap a new one on in like 30 minutes.
Well, hasn't Coke has been doing that for years, haven't they?
What's that?
Coca-Cola, they've been doing that for years. Basically being able to pull out a condensing unit and slap another one on in case the compressor goes bad.
Yeah, I mean, do you save money? Probably not. I mean, now you're buying a whole unit. I mean, for what may be a board. I mean, you try to replace the technician, you end up with the expensive parts changer.
Dry cooler pumping glycol, the heat exchanger, and the condensers on the sales floor. Every 4 foot is its own. Yeah. Where does the external equalization line go on an A9 valve used for hot gas injection on a hot sleep side for? Greg, you're an ass. So I learned a very important lesson. We got A9 valves for the for that specialty unit that gets down to a dew point. I think we got it down. The dew point for the space, Kevin, was all the way down to 9 degrees or something like that. And if you're doing suction capacity control, make sure the hot gas line, the auxiliary port, is actually hooked up to the suction, not right after the hot gas. Otherwise, it makes the valve chatter, apparently. What else we got going on? What are you reading through? You just reading through all the comments?
No.
I'm trying to think what were some of the other questions that I had from before, because everyone's sick and tired of talking about 290 at this point in time.
I guess something we could talk about setting low pressure switches on 448 and 449 with all these new freezers. So I don't know if anybody's doing all these OGP installs, especially for the Bullseye store. The GPU pickups and stuff, they're using 448 and 449 for all the condensing units, and these things have been running the way they size them, and the way with the lower head pressure they're trying to maintain. The compressors are way oversized, so these things are running like a 6-pound suction, sometimes 5 pounds. You get a little bit of a pressure drop on the lines. I've seen this happen multiple times over the last 2 weeks. Is these pressure switches need to be set at like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds cutout for these things to actually work.
So these things are running.
Or else they go ahead.
So these things are running like the Bezos build, right?
Yeah, you broke up.
I said they're running like the Bezos build.
Yeah, no, 100%. They same exact issues. They're running like a 65-degree saturated condensing pressure or condensing temperature, and it's been nothing but issues because the compressors are way oversized now, and in the wintertime they're short cycling. So every one of these guy sets with a mechanical set of or a standard set of gauges, we're back there 2 days later or a day later. As soon as the freezer comes down to temp, and it's just banging on and off. So, I mean, you pretty much can't set these without a digital gauge. I mean, it has to be like almost exact, like 1 pound, 1.5 pound cutout.
Who else here has been doing any of the OGP projects? I'm just curious. We're gonna do another stream with Ketotherm, and I wanted to cover some of the basic problems that they've been having. I didn't know if anyone else out here is doing install and working on any of these. Kevin, you've done a bunch of these?
Yeah, I mean, I've only done like 2 or 3 of the Walmart ones, but I mean, the Bullseye store, like we're cranking them out like 10 stores a week. So, the Walmart ones I really haven't seen too many issues with. I mean, most of it's been, unfortunately, the electricians suck.
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's stuff like that, or sensors getting put in the wrong spots, or sensors crisscrossed, EEVs crisscrossed. That's been a big one, is making sure the EEVs are going to the right coils.
Oh, speaking of pressure switches, you know what else really doesn't work that well? When you have a low pressure switch hooked up to the high pressure port on the discharge of the compressor.
Yeah, that's been the last 4 Husband units I go to start. They all have low pressure controls in them instead of high pressure controls.
Really?
Yeah, and they're throwing on these new Penn, not to shit on Penn or Johnson controls, but they're throwing on these new Penn. They almost look like explosion-proof controls, like they're sealed. These things are a pile. I mean, the range is like half of it's in bar, so I mean, it's so the range is so far off. I mean, I'm telling you, unless you got a set of digital gauges and you're quick with it. I mean, I've been setting it with nitrogen because I'm just tired of dealing with it. Um, I mean, it's pretty tough to set up. I mean, the scale's useless. Just throw the scale away. You might as well just cross it off.
Wait, the explosion proof. So they're like all aluminum, right?
Yeah, they're all aluminum.
No, they're garbage. That's what's they're putting on all the Husband units, right?
Yep, all the Husband units are getting those. I mean, they're junk. Like they're far off. Like they're. I mean, you'll set it, and I mean, I was testing it with nitrogen. One time it'll trip at 2 pounds. One time it trips at 6 pounds. One time it trips at 0 pounds. One time it trips at 11 pounds. I mean, it's just all over the place, and that's using nitrogen in a meter, just checking it. I mean, it's just they're just very inconsistent. I mean, but that goes with everything made in 2021. I mean, everything's just they're just
Was that you that just sent me the temperature control, the A19 that was
yeah,
off for like 12 or 13 degrees?
it's 15 degrees out of the box, third one in a row. So like it's set at 15 degrees and it's cycling at 33. It's at 14. Like I'm sitting there messing with it. I'm like, what is going on here? Like I refuse to buy them anymore. Like that's it. Like I'm switching over everything to pretty much digital, and like I've been using like the off the shelf Dixel ones, and to be honest, the KE2 ones are way better. Like they make a I mean it's almost as cheap, if not cheaper, than the Johnson Controls A419.
Yeah.
And it has built-in defrost, so I mean you don't have to pay the extra money for the Johnson Controls one.
Wait,
So
which does?
the KE2 one. KE2 makes a like temperature and defrost controller. I mean our local supply house is yeah, those suck, and disabling the OMC at Walgreens. Why
OMC.
would you want to disable the oil control? Really, I know Husband's been sending a lot of compressors out with OMCs on them for oil safeties on scrolls.
Really?
Yeah, so a lot of smart units. I mean, I wouldn't disable it. I mean, it's there for a reason. I mean, you probably need a little bit of oil. I mean, you got to remember in a scroll, especially in a single application, if you get a little bit of flood back, you're going to wash that puppy out pretty quick. So, I mean, if you get a little bit of flood back in there, you're going to wash it out. So, I mean, you're not going to have like a rack. You're not going to have an oil reservoir refilling that thing. So, I mean, it's going to have to come back on its own. So, I mean, yeah, it isn't the best place for an OMC. I mean, because you're not going to get that restart, but it's going to protect that compressor from, wash the oil getting washed out of it and, burn up the bearings. So, I mean, it's there for a reason. I mean, I wouldn't disable it.
Had a unit with 3.1 was HP on the covers, but low pressure under the cover. So I think you must be talking. Must be a Husband unit. What? It probably had one high pressure and the other two fan cycling. Scott. I can't find A419. Only A421. Skip. I don't know what you're talking about. Refer control.
I don't think they make the 419 anymore.
No. Can you send digital info on the digital compressor setting Husband protocol racks? It all seems to be set with 10% minimum on digital, but pretty sure that it's supposed to be 20 or 30% minimum.
I run all mine at 10. I'm not losing compressors. I mean, if you're overheating, yeah, that's a problem. I mean, you need to address that though. I mean, I run all my digital scrolls at 10%. I mean, there's some of them, the K5s especially, like I think you can only go down to 20 or 30. It's all dependent, but I mean, I've been running all my digital scrolls at 10%, and I haven't had really any issues. I mean, most of the digitals I see go bad or murdered. I mean, it's usually from flood back or something else.
Flood back or high superheat, right? Because then you're already running high temperature and then you're just killing it on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, the number one failure I see in those digitals is a sticking solenoid. The solenoid sticks, it stays unloaded, and it overheats and kills itself.
Was a field modification game with stickers and all. Like I say, guys, you got to put your name on here because unfortunately, it doesn't always show who's actually texting. Someone's saying that they say 30%. What does the book say? Like the actual the application engineering document. You know, Kev?
There's like three different. One says 10%, one says 20%, one says 30%. This depends what document you look at. To be honest with you,
Really?
yeah. So I mean, it depends. I mean, I run mine at 10%. I have no issues. So I mean, I see them at 30% all the time, and especially if you're at an Aldi, you're going to have nothing but problems. That freezer is going to be loping all over the place. It's going to run like crap. I mean, it needs to hit that 10%. I mean, they need that downturn. I mean, but again, most of the time I see them, they're dead. They're murdered.
So if the customer has two set points, the off temp and the on temp. I still don't know what he's talking about. New Costco running 90 degrees of superheat on low temp rack. That's not going to live long.
Is it actually 90 degrees of superheat, or is it post defrost 90 degrees of superheat? If it's post defrost, I mean, you're going to have to take the EEPRs and you're going to have to put a pull down percentage in them. You know, you can go into the 700 boards and you could set up a step down in it. I usually make it take like 15 to 20 minutes, and I limit the step down during that whole time to like no more than 10% open towards the end, so that way it bleeds the gas out slower, so it isn't all coming back at once. The other thing is make sure your term settings aren't too high, and then third thing would be is the suction floating, and are your valves in your freezer set should be like 6 to 8 degrees max on the freezer coils. I mean, if you're not getting that, you're not going to get down. I mean, yeah, it's going to run a little warmer, but I mean, you got to remember that's all 2-inch armo. I mean, you should have tons of cooling coming back to those compressors. I mean, most of the time I see them 50 to 40 degrees. I mean, they always run a little high, but 90 is insane. I mean, if it's post defrost, that's what the issue is. If you're seeing spikes, if it shoots way up, then it's an EPR pull down issue. You need to let it have a little more bleed out. I mean, you got to remember that's a big line and a big coil. So I mean, you got to slowly bleed out that coil, or else you're going to have all that hot vapor is going to hit the rack instantly. And if it's 407F, it's going to flood back like a banshee.
Really that bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember on the older Costco racks before they started putting all the electronic CDS valves. You know, they would have a sport valve on there or an A8, and then basically a solenoid in parallel with it. And the solenoid would kick on first, little 3/8 line just to pump it out, and then it would finally, you know, open up the sport valve.
Yeah, I mean those work great, and I mean when they're on there, it works great.
Australia, how to calibrate a liquid level sensor.
I'll let you take.
All right, empty out the receiver. Um, preferably do this in the in a colder time, so you can make sure that you can pump everything into the condenser. Force all your fans on to get the pressure as low as humanly possible. Make sure you valve off the receiver pressurization valve. Otherwise, it'll just keep filling up. Basically, want to get it down to absolutely nothing. You can assist this by putting discharge gas in the receiver, and that'll help boil off the refrigerant as well. To help push that refrigerant out. Get it down to 0%. Adjust the Z span. Depending on where you're at. Is it 1 to 6? Is it 1 to 6 and 0 to 5? Yeah. Yeah. So depending on where you have it, get it so it's reading. I usually do point 0.001, or just having it read right at 1 volt if you're doing 1 to 6. And then basically, once you get it zeroed out, fill it all the way back up to 50% or somewhere that you can see it, and adjust the S span, and make sure it's reading properly at halfway, and then just let it run, and make sure it's adjusted properly. Be careful. There are some manufacturers out there that put on the wrong size Hansen rod, where basically they'll have a 60-inch receiver, and they might only put in a 54-inch Hansen rod, so your level's off. So just be mindful of that. I've seen that at a bunch of Bullseye stores.
Or you just throw a fat offset in there in the controller and say it fixes everything.
Offset.
No,
Yeah,
but I've seen the same thing with the wrong rod being in there.
Sean,
and don't put anything on the threads either. When you put the rod in the tank, you can't put Teflon tape on the threads.
Why?
It'll throw off the ground for the sensor. Because we had this at another store. The guy went there to replace the rod, and it was doing the same thing. It wasn't reading right. It was erratic. And this is the first thing Hansen asked me is if there was Teflon tape on the threads. It actually kills the ground on the threads. He had enough Teflon on there. They want you to use Loctite, or they use a pipe dope.
Really?
Something. Yes. So if you put Teflon on there, like Teflon tape, like Blue Monster tape, it'll actually, if you put enough on there, it will kill the conductivity of the sensor, so it loses the ground.
Oh shit. Have you seen a transcritical rack with a newer version of the HPCV? It looks like an EPR body and not a typical IMCT valves at Trader Joe's. Kev, that's all you.
Yeah, so that's they're using CCM T40s, and Sporlan has their own now. I don't know the nomenclature on the Sporlan ones, but they're using, most of the time it's CCM Danfoss valves for your stuff. Sporlan makes a high pressure valve. Danfoss makes one. I'm pretty sure Emerson makes one too. I mean, it's just smaller applications. And then the actual high pressure valve, the old style valve driver that you used to seeing with the Danfoss head on it. So those are obsolete now. They don't make those anymore. You can still get it for replacements, but that actual valve driver is gone. So they've gone away from that. So all these new racks coming out have a separate driver. I don't remember the Danfoss number for it off the top of my head, but there's a separate driver for the high pressure valve. So the high pressure valve has its own driver board, and if you're using a Danfoss 326A controller, it's going to be controlling your flash gas bypass valve and doing all your calculations, and then it's sending a 10 to 0 volt signal to another Danfoss controller, and it is actually driving the high pressure valve. So you could drive your high pressure valve off that. I mean, it's a lot nicer the way they're doing it now, because if you were to lose your actual Danfoss, see, we had a store, it got wet, rack went down, blew the charge, couldn't get it to run. The high pressure valve driver got wet and went out. I was able to take a ESR board, I was able to put that driver on the ESR board, invert the wires for the Danfoss valve, program the steps in there, and I was actually able to take the 10 to 0 volt signal from the 326A to tell the high pressure valve what to do. I was able to drive that off the E2. So I just wrote it so it would step the valve from off a 0 to 10 volt signal inside the E2, and it was modulating the high pressure valve that way. That rack ran like that for like 2.5 weeks in the middle of summer with zero issues. So I mean, the two valve system like that gives you a little bit more flexibility with it. I mean, that high pressure magnetic driver, I guess, was really expensive, and so I mean, with this, it allows you to get the high pressure valve smaller. So the smaller you get the valve, the less open it's going to be, so the less hunting you have. So the more properly sized the porting in those valves is really important. The more properly sized the porting is, the better the high pressure valve is going to run.
How about an A8 to CDS conversion? Any info on that?
They're cake. I mean, it's literally take the bolts out of the CD or the A8 valve and slap on the CDS valve. I mean, if the bodies are rotted, I mean, I would just get a CDS valve, but for the most part, they're pretty easy. I mean, I've done a bunch of them. I've also broken bolts off and just mother F myself up and down. So, I mean, if you're doing some really old ones, I would go there the day before and I'd soak them all in PB Blaster and just, have an easy out and a tap, because, I mean, I don't know how many times I've gone to take an A8 apart and busted a bolt, especially if they're pretty nasty looking. But I mean, they're pretty easy. You just got to follow the steps and set the step rate up properly in the controller. And then other than that, it's pretty easy. It's all about tuning.
We got this one. Know basics of loading and unloading a rack. You're basically just trying to maintain whatever suction pressure that you're, trying to maintain for your saturated suction. Most unloaders are suction blocking, where basically it blocks off the suction to prevent it from getting any suction gas. That's why your suction pressure increases. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. In reference to the Costco. The problem is, I think Sean wasn't. I couldn't see Sean's name, and he was making comments, and then I guess started having a computer up so I can actually read through these. Because, like I said, it's kind of messed up because I can't see everyone that's typing away. Googling conductive pipe dope. Capacitive circuit enhancing rod. Thread is part circuit similar to the set screw on the. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Check MG chemicals silver conductive grease, Amazon. Well, thanks, guys. I have Teflon tape on there, so take it off and give it another go. On standard protocol for XCM20 going down. Any quick retrofitting? It depends. Is it just, because sometimes they'll put the XCM on there and it's just controlling the condenser fan motors. Sometimes it's controlling the whole condensing unit. It depends, because I think those ones are configurable. It can actually control circuits, and it'll control the defrost for the circuit, right, Kev? No? Yes?
I barely heard any of that. So
No, on the XCM, he's asking about if it goes down, and I said it's dependent on what it's actually controlling, because you have some that basically are controlling the defrost, right? And
yeah, but I think the only one that I don't know about any of the new boards, the backnet boards. I don't know if they hold their program. I'm not really quite sure on that. I'm pretty sure they all need the XCM to run, except for the condenser board.
like
I think the condenser.
you talking about this one?
Oh, I thought we were talking about Nova for a second.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe he is. I thought he was talking about the condenser board, because I don't know what the model. What's the model number for that?
That's actually I don't know. I got way too much in my head to remember that.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure he's talking about Novar.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just get a new Novar controller from Novar.
It should. No, if that's not running it, I don't think anything's going to go into defrost, right?
No.
Noobs. No Nova Rack controllers.
Yeah, he's talking about Novar. I mean, the only thing you could do is put the new Novar controller in. I mean, that's all you could do. I mean, there's nothing else to do but that. I mean, if it keeps crashing, I mean, they could disable Walmart polling it all the time for their alarm system. But I mean, other than that, I mean, you're gonna have to get a new controller sent out. I mean,
well, hold on. The ES1 is still going to take control of the rack, so yeah, everything's still going to go into a defrost.
No, if it's down, it's not going to.
Yeah, but that's just the display, though.
An XCM20R is the actual the original Opus controller.
Okay.
So that is a predecessor to the actual ES1. So I mean 3 months out. I mean, I got one like 2 weeks ago. So I mean, they're not that far out. I mean, they can get them for emergencies. I mean, they're not going to leave a store down for that long. I mean, they could pull it from another place. I mean, you're able to get it. I mean, and if that's the case, then rip it out and put CPC in.
Nice.
I mean, what's the other choice? You can't get a rack controller. You can get a rack controller. Get an E2 with a layover kit with a layover and overlay it.
Yeah. Oh, hey, listen, guys, I gotta go. Dinner's here. You guys have a good night.
Yep. Take it easy, guys.
All right, bye.